We're rolling. It says that we're now live. So for those of you tuning in, we are here with the one and only Mark Metry. And I'm super honored to have him just today to riff on some ideas around storytelling and content, as well as just the brainstorming and kind of, I think, storytelling engine he's become through his work. And so really great to have you here today, Mark. Do you want to share maybe a bit about yourself for people that are tuning in for the first time?
Joel, thanks for having me. The way that I would describe myself is I literally today do the opposite of everything that I was taught, programmed, naturally designed to do. I spent the first part of my life literally wanting nobody to know my story. I didn't even know I had a story, not wanting anybody to know who I was, my name. I just wanted to blend in the back of society of just like a number. Mm-hmm. And today pre-COVID, I would be on stages. I'd be traveling all the time. I have a podcast. I've written a book. I'm a part of a couple of different documentary series. Mm-hmm. And I literally just speak on all the things that I tried to suppress in the first half of my life. And so, yeah, man, it's definitely been a crazy journey. And dude, thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think over the last little while, it's been, super fascinating just to follow your story. And I think we've, message and change thoughts here and there on all the different platforms. But it's inspiring to see you're someone that when you have a thought, you take action and you follow it up with consistency. And I think that's something that, the news and media love to pick fun of, with people in maybe our age bracket. And I think one of the things I love and admire most about your work is that you consistently show up with excellence. And that's hard to do in today's world. And so,
dude, I really appreciate that, man. And it's funny, right? So I remember in 2016 when I was basically in 2015, I kind of hit rock bottom in my life. And then 2016, I was climbing out of that. Mm. And I remember going on this walk with my best friend. Mm. And we were talking about entrepreneurship and starting companies and starting all these things and taking this idea and doing it. And my friend, super smart, he was the top of his class. Yeah. And, he looks at me and he says, what makes you totally different, Mark? We all have these ideas. I'm probably a little bit less intelligent than him. And basically what he told me is we have all these ideas. We talk. Some of them are good. We could probably do it. And he goes on. He tells me the difference is that when we get home, we turn on the football game. We watch a movie. We debate about some random crap. But when you go home, you actually do it. And so, the best lesson that I've gotten out of that is I felt like I was behind for so long in my life because I was a terrible student, had terrible social skills, had really barely any friends, wasn't an athlete, just not successful by most measures of society. And so I honestly feel like I had to literally compensate and literally just create myself to be able to take just this raw energy that I think a lot of us have, but we're not taught how to use it. And it usually comes out in the form of anxiety, depression, stress, overthinking, confusion, denial, lying. And I think for me, I've just been on this journey of just learning how to harness that energy. And the more you know how to harness your more energy, then when an idea comes in, then, you take it, you try to do something with it, and it happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen. You send it to someone. 2 weeks later, it's this new thing. For a month later, it's now it's an outline of something. You know what I mean? And so that's really it, man. And so the biggest thing that I've honestly learned is that I literally just felt like a loser my entire life. I felt like I was losing my entire life, but it's the ability to take that and then be like, all right, screw it. Let's just if we got nothing to lose, let's just play around with this idea. Let's just make it happen, man. So that's it, dude. That's how you do it.
I love it. Thanks for sharing kind of the behind the scenes story of kind of your journey, but also what it sounds like the framework of how you kind of validate these stories and then bring them into action. I'm curious to ask, like, in today's world, we have so much stimuli of ideas, and I'm curious, with someone like yourself that probably believes in the hedgehog concept of, do things that you're the best at and spend time on that. How do you, validate which ideas you should spend time on? And then, how many do you have in the basket of how many ideas you're pushing forward to execution at a time?
Damn, man, what a question, dude. I feel like I'm gonna answer this in like a college essay or something.
Drop a link.
Yeah, seriously, dude. Well, to be honest with you, I don't know what a hedgehog theory is. I've never heard of that, but I think I know what you're talking about, like focusing on your strengths. Yeah. Honestly, dude, I think that you should professionally focus on your strengths, but I don't necessarily believe in that in terms of just focusing on your strengths. And the reason why is because, I think that, like, we are all sort of the summation of our past, our family, our culture, our religion, our traumas, our feelings. And so I think that you're just a filter for whatever you experience, right? And so two people could hear the same exact idea, but what enables one person to work on it, do something with it, and then what enables the other person to maybe say, oh, that's a stupid idea, or like, that's not even worth my time. And so I love that. And I think that's like the beauty of human nature. And I think we're all just like this jungle that's walking around. And so honestly, what I've learned is, I'm probably not the smartest guy. I'm probably not the most creative. But I'm just gonna like try my best. And I think the best part is, like, for me, my life is now structured in a way where I don't really think about it, but yet I'm always talking to, like, amazing people. I'm always having the world's best conversations. I'm having great ideas as a result of that. And that's just because I am what I preach. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of it is dependent on who you are, because everyone is a magnet in the universe. And that magnet is based off what you're posting on LinkedIn, what you're talking about with people, how you look, how your energy, all that stuff flows. And so the more and more that you can represent yourself as just like yourself and that crazy jungle that may be good at certain things and may be bad at certain things, then I think what happens is people start to come to you, right? Like, for example, this conversation that we're having right now, I may get an idea off this live stream, and it's literally because you found me somewhere through like me talking about something, and I don't know what it was. It could have been marketing. It could have been more mental health. I don't know. And so that's the biggest thing, man. And like, when you're able to create a life where you're the magnet, and then you're constantly having all these conversations, you're constantly communicating because of who you are, because of what you've been working on, which is literally just putting stuff out there. Like, you don't even have to be successful. Totally. Then people come to you. And then when people come to you, that is when the craziest stuff happens. Because one of the biggest things that I've had to learn, like, honestly, this year, last year, is what's important about an idea is the why. Not even necessarily the what or the how. And the reason why is because, I have this friend of mine. His name is Naveen Jain. And this dude, he has like a space company. He has a super innovative healthcare company. And this guy's like an entrepreneur. And he started this healthcare company. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist
and he
or
was
anything
on the
like
podcast, right? I think I heard this one.
Yeah. He was on the podcast twice, and he had me on his podcast. I'm good friends with him. But anyway, he really told me this great idea of like the world doesn't necessarily need more experts. And of course, like, expertise, there's a great, like space for them. Of course, we need experts. Yeah. But basically what he was telling me is that experts have gotten good at one single thing, right? So it's like, I know how to do this in like the best way. I know how to do it in every method. Yeah. But when we're talking about, creating something that has never existed, and we're talking about creating the future, then you're not just going to need one expert. You're going to need a wide variety of multidisciplinary experts combined with a group of leaders that know how to think out the box and may not be experts in bioengineering or rocket science, but they understand some basics and they're able to sort of put them in a way that can make sense in the world.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing that I've learned, man, is that the most important thing is you need to sort of become like a beacon for your mission, your why, your purpose. Because what's going to happen is you're not the smartest person, right? You're probably not the best person to do the job. But what's going to happen is smarter people are going to come to you who are attracted by your vision. And then through like the nitty gritty, the meetings, the sessions, then you're going to figure out the how. But when you're sitting there in your room and you're like, oh, what's an idea? Oh, what's that? Like, it's very unlikely, you know? And so it's a very messy process. But I think the biggest thing is just like, you don't need to be an expert on it, but you do need to have some understanding. But you need to put yourself in a position to where you're able to be interconnected with the experts so that you're constantly running through these ideas. And then eventually what happens is your brain becomes a muscle where it sort of begins to see like, oh, that's not going to work, or that may work, but we're going to need this. And like, it's really just like the beauty sort of behind it. And then you go to try to implement it in the real world and you're like, oh crap, we got to totally redo this. And that's the beauty messiness of life, man. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
I have two questions that I want to pull on that amazing delivery. The first one is, so I'm an extrovert. I love conversations, came from a family of 7, but I have friends and I speak with people that are, introverted, and I chat with, baby boomers, and they, will ask their kids, do you guys keep a journal? Do you keep a thought stream that is just private and your own thoughts so that you can kind of think and reflect and dig deeper into like a stream of consciousness? And something I've been kind of wrestling over is, where's that balance of educating people on the power of content and sharing those ideas publicly to maintain a private stream of thoughts so that you can maintain.
Joel, repeat that last part again. It just cut out for a second.
Oh, I was just saying, where's the balance and keeping a private just
Joe, I don't know what's happening, but
it's
like I have no idea what you're asking.
What about now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Are you basically are you asking like, how do you keep your life private compared to like if you're gonna post it on social media? Is that what you're asking? Or I'm sorry, it cut out again. Yeah, dude, after this I gotta get you on a different live streaming service. All right, well, I have no idea if I'm glitched out or if you guys can see me. So I'm just going to run this show, okay? I have no idea if I'm glitching out or what's happening. So Joel, he kind of invited me to talk about LinkedIn, talk about, what does somebody do if they're trying to start off and they're trying to be in a position to where they're trying to, start their LinkedIn presence. Maybe they haven't, worked at a company, or they, sort of, this is so funny. All right, guys, we're live. All right, guys, this is how we're going to do the live. I don't know if Joel is affiliated with this company, but guys, Restream.io. Go check out Restream.io. It is a great, yo, what's up, dude? I was running your live stream. I was actually promoting one of my sponsors, which is a live streaming company, which I got to get you on after this because they're way better. No offense to StreamYard.
No, totally. And I mean, the stream doesn't lie, and I just jumped out, so maybe I'll have to jump onto yours.
So, dude, what were you asking? You were saying, like, what's the line between privacy and public, or what were you asking?
Yeah,
was that it?
Basically that. Like, as an introvert or someone that doesn't always want to share their ideas publicly, I think there's a lot of value in keeping, a personal journal. Where do you see the balance?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So it's interesting, right? So people will look at my content and they'll say that I am very public. I talk about mental health all the time. I talk about, my journey, a lot of these intimate things like suicide, obesity, things that people are struggle to talk about. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing for me is that I don't really necessarily talk or put on my social media, like my friends or family, because to me it's like, I choose to do this, but anyone else who's in my life, they don't choose to do that, right? And so that's the kind of privacy that I have. But I think the biggest thing is that it's funny, right? Because when you actually look at someone who's an introvert, what being an introvert means is that the way that your brain is structured is you focus more on, you're more introspective, basically. Your brain focuses more on the internal world, thoughts, feelings, emotions. Whereas extroverts, they're like sort of more naturally mindful, like their brain naturally reacts to the environment. And so like you can be an introvert who maybe quiet, likes their privacy, but you could also be an introvert who likes sharing, and so the biggest thing behind that is just like realizing who you are, and then also just like realizing that like what's your movement, what's your mission, right? And so for me, a big part of my mission is I literally want I want the younger version of me to have been able to live in a world where mental health, social anxiety, being shy, all these things aren't something to be ashamed of. And the reality is that needs to happen from people talking about it, And so that for me is part of my mission. But, if your mission isn't, then, you don't have to. And yeah, the other thing too that I would say is like, I know that if you are in like a corporate job, I know the dynamics might be different, but I think the biggest thing is I think you need to sort of build a house. And so, I work with some clients on LinkedIn stuff and I help them work through this. And it's like a lot of people, when they go to start LinkedIn and start posting, it's like, oh, well, what should I post about? Right? Should I post about this random thing that just happened to me? Should I post about just like my industry information? And the biggest thing is that, I believe there's 3 forms of content. I believe there is content about your expertise, which is like more professional content. I think there's content about your story. And then I think there's collaboration content. And there's multiple variants within those. But I think if you actually want to stand out and you want to be successful and stand for something, you have to have all 3 of those. And so a lot of the times people are hesitant to share their story because they don't even know their story, or they don't know it from a multi-angled perspective. And so what I mean by that is like, you may think in your head like, hey, I'm Joel. I'm like this 23-year-old dude. I've grown up here. I like these things. I think these are my values. I have like a story that sticks out to me from my past that shows who I am. But a lot of the times, just like personally in our lives, we just haven't gone back and documented, right? And there's like different things that you can do. Like you can build a timeline of your life that really just kind of shows like who you are, what happened to you. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times you're going to be hesitant and you're going to be like, oh, is this public, private? And it's just because you don't have the confidence, because you actually haven't gone back to your past and recounted and be like, okay, this is something I'm comfortable with sharing. This is something that for the time being, I don't really want to talk about because it involves, other people. And so the biggest thing is just like, go back into your life, take stock. And if you really want to do like this whole LinkedIn personal branding thing, you also have to realize, kind of what it takes. And it's not like you have to share every detail in your life, but you do have to be relatable. You do have to be a human. You can't just, sell stuff, or you can't just, talk about, industry specific knowledge and whatnot. And so my take on it is that you have to have sort of a mix of content, and the way that you gain confidence around public privacy is just by like journaling about it in your own life. And I think a lot of people haven't done that. yet. And so they don't I don't mean to say this like in like a negative way, but I just think people don't have the self-awareness themselves. And like the funny part about it is like I've met a lot of leaders who some of them are my clients, but are people who are very confident, great leaders, have very high self-esteem, and yet they will even lack sort of the self-awareness to be able to recount their story in a way that they can show that to the world. Because, Joel, your wife knows who you are, your family knows who you are, your friends know who you are. But then when you go to post on LinkedIn, people don't know who you really are, right? And so it's sort of like people think it's like a common sense skill to be able to translate who you actually are in real life to social media, when in reality, I think it's a skill that someone truly has to build. Because there's a lot of people who are very self-aware in their life, but yet on social media, they're not self-aware. And it's not because they suck. It's not because they're trying to be too markety. It's literally because they just haven't developed that skill to transform the relatability that, is broken down into body language, our psychology, what I know about you, into this sort of game where you become a picture and you become a different LED pixeled lights, and there's a font letter, and then you write something, and then everyone reads that from their perspective, and they could totally understand something totally different than what you intention. And so yeah, man, it's pretty complicated. It's kind of like a psychological game. But I think ultimately, if you want to do that, then you definitely have to tell your story, and there's levels to it. And so I would say to just recount that yourself, share it with some friends, make sure you know who you are before you sort of go out there and kind of air your laundry out to the world.
Totally. No, thanks for sharing that kind of bigger answer to what I think for some people can be a big barrier of a question. Before I kind of jump into like another question like that, if you were to share just like your 3 favorite like journaling or content tools, are you like an Evernote guy? Are you Google Docs? Like, do you email your stuff? Like, what's you would like to take? And what tools do you think people should have on their dashboard?
That's a good question, man. So for me, this is the way that I do it, man. So in my phone, I literally just have like the biggest notepad. And then what I'll do is a lot of the times that's how my ideas will initially start. I'll be on a walk. I'll be done with this conversation and something will stick out to me. And I'll write down like a sentence in my notepad, in my iPhone. And then what I'll do is if that becomes something, then I'll put that in my Google Drive folder. And I have a Google Drive folder that literally has hundreds of like ideas, posts, concepts, themes, things that I've revised back and forth. And so, yeah, like in terms of tools, in terms of apps,
Google Drive could be one.
Yeah, Google Drive is one. I mean, dude, a big one is my iPad.
Okay.
I have an iPad Pro, and the Apple Pencil and the ability to write stuff down in your notepad and then like be able to brainstorm it and then see that on your phone at any time.
Crazy.
That's a game changer, dude. And like I'm a big journaler. Yeah. Right? And the thing that I always, sort of saw as a flaw was, okay, I'm gonna be at home and I'm gonna, write stuff down in this paper. But then if I'm on the train or if I'm somewhere else and I didn't bring my journal with me, then I don't have access to my ideas, right? And like in terms of ideas, like, there's this great theory, and it's called the skin bag bias. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I don't think so.
And basically what it says is that we think of ideas and we think of the mind as things that are in our skin. So like our body, our brain, right? And so that's how most people think of it. But basically there's this theory that says the moment that you put an idea out there into the world and your brain can now interact with that idea, visually speaking. So like I'm literally talking about like if you write something down on a piece of paper, what happens is your brain works on a series of feedback loops. And what happens is the average person has 60,000 thoughts, ideas a day. And a lot of the times we are aware of them, but most often we're not aware of these thoughts, and they just go underneath the surface and they actually control our lives and they control our behavior. But the ability to write down a thought on a piece of paper, and then your brain is now going to start a feedback loop between the thoughts that are in your brain right now with the thought that is on paper. And what will happen is you will actually think different thoughts than you normally would based on that. And so, yeah, the biggest thing that I've learned is just like a lot of thinking, a lot of good ideas, they happen when you can see them in the world, when they're no longer in your brain. And so anything I can do to like write that, I think another tool for me is Twitter. I use it sometimes more than others, but I'll literally use Twitter just to like, I'll like think of something and be like, all right, let me tweet this out, see what happens. And like, if you look at my Twitter and then you look at my LinkedIn, a lot of my like lengthy LinkedIn posts have started off as like one sentence Twitter things, right? And what happens is like I put an idea out there and then someone tweets me and they're like, yo, have you seen this article? Yo, have you seen this? And then all of a sudden I'm like
building the idea.
Yeah. Obviously that could be a distraction, but I think like the ability to whether it's Google Docs, Twitter, your iPad, the ability to put something out there publicly or privately, and then have your brain interact with that again.
Yeah.
That's how you get great ideas, man. It's not just the sort of the first evolution, just neurologically speaking, that happens in between the synapses of your brain, you know?
Love that. So down to the last question, I want to toss a big curveball to you because I know you do a lot of these conversations. So we'll get your social links at the end, but I know we'll do one last big question. This question's been inspired by a friend called Eric Tremonde. He asked it on a fireside chat, and he said I could borrow it if I credit him. This is the situation, Mark.
Oh, God.
All of the universities are at their grad ceremony for 2020 or 2021, and they have live streamed you in to give the last minute of the talk to inspire them to go into the world and make a difference. What do you communicate to them in 1 minute to all the graduates of 2020 or 2021?
This is what I would say. There are so many problems in the world. You may be passionate about a problem that's happening. Maybe it's climate change. Maybe it's what's happening in Yemen or Syria. Pick a problem. The matter of the fact is that most people in the world have the same exact motives and missions as you. They want to do something great. But you know who ends up stopping them? Themselves. People, you are your own biggest obstacle. The matter of the fact is that you're not going to be able to actually make the change that you want in the world if you are still the main person who's standing in front of your way every single day. And so if you actually want to get out there and you want to help people, you need to at first help yourself, because once you are able to help yourself, then you don't have an incessant need to constantly focus on yourself. And when you're constantly focusing on yourself, that's how people are like, hey, I want to go solve this major problem, but how am I going to afford my bills? But how am I going to do this? How am I going to get the help that I need? And so most people are standing in their own way. And so help yourself first, and then be able to help other people and get out of your own way, because that's the way it works everywhere. Politics, any organization, the government, schools, companies, startups. The biggest problem is people's ego, and the biggest problem is people staying in front of their own ego. And people can do this in varying degrees. You know, I'm not trying to, pick on a certain group. Everybody does this to certain degrees with different tools, different vices, different lies that we tell ourselves. And so you're standing in your own way. That's it. That's what I would say.
Mic drop. Massive.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you carving away this time.
I just thought of another one.
Yeah, and where can people find out more about you? I know you've released the book. You're all over social media. Any key spots to bring people? What would you say?
Yes. So you're probably watching this on LinkedIn. So go to my LinkedIn profile, Mark Metry, and send me a personalized connection request and tell me you came from Joel. And yeah, and of course I've got my book, Screw Being Shy. The audiobook is also out, which got approved like this month when it came out in March. And yeah, and you know, my website is markmetry.com. That's like a good central spot. Mm-hmm. Of course, I've got my podcast, Humans 2.0, and yeah, hit me up if you came from this live stream.
I love it. Okay, well, thanks so much for your time, and thank you for being the example you are to the world. It's super inspiring.
Yo, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, I take back my message. So what I would say in graduation is this.
Yeah.
When I was 15, 16, my wildest dreams came true. I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars doing something that I loved. Didn't even go to college, any of that stuff. That is literally when my life got the worst. Mm. And so what I would say to this class or whatever is most of us have no idea what we want. Most of us have no idea what success looks like because most of us have never gotten there. The moment you reach to success, the moment you realize it's not what you think, and success is way beyond money, fame, followers. It is like literally how you think, feel, and breathe about yourself. And there's no magic pill in the single world that can do that. Not a single one. There isn't, you know, if you get married, if you start $100 million business, like there's no pill that you can take that can like get you to some magical wonderland where you're happy all the time and you're given success. No, that's not the way it works. Just ask literally any successful person who also like killed themselves, for example. And so, I mean, that's kind of dark, but you know, that's the truth behind it. And the reality is that so many people are just following these false goals to hit these basic metrics in our society of what they think they have to do when they haven't even built the foundation of their authentic self, which is how all of that truly starts. And that's how you truly gain success. And so that's what I would say, man. So sorry for taking up your time.
No, that's awesome. And thank you for wanting to show up fully for that answer. I think that's just as valuable. And I'm honored that you wanted to jump back on the question.
And dude, the last thing that I'll say, dude, is because we talked about ideas a lot.
Yeah.
I think the ability to like do what I just did of like, I gave you an answer, and then later in my head, I was like, yeah, that was literally the worst thing I've ever said in my life. The ability to take down your ideas, but not take them personally, not be like, oh, well, if I said this, then no. It's to like get objective with your idea. So that's the last thing that I would say, and that's like a good meta lesson. But dude, thank you so much for having me, dude. This was so fun.
Of course. All the best with the rest of the week, and we'll stay in touch, Mark. See ya.
Woo! All right, dude. I appreciate you, bro. Yo, dude, I got to get you on